Last year, I started reviewing the Ratchet Clank Future Trilogy with Tools of Destruction, and today I'm covering the direct sequel Quest for Booty. I say sequel, but it might as well just be a DLC for Tools of Destruction, as it's a very short adventure at about 3 hours long that borrows plenty of elements from its predecessor, including characters, controls, and weapons. It also serves as a lead-in to A Crack in Time, which I'll be covering in 2 months from now on its 15th anniversary, but for now, I'm reviewing Quest for Booty on its 16th anniversary. What a funny ass name that is. It's one of the best innuendo titles in the series, and it makes complete sense, as you are in fact searching for booty, in various senses. But, is the booty worth the trouble, or does it stink? Let's find out as I take you on this quest.
If x is the coefficient of a squared minus the improbability of the hypotenuse at absolute zero, the Bogon index of the denominator must be equal or lesser to the number of bees in your bonnet.
Ratchet & Clank Future Quest for Booty released on the PlayStation 3's PlayStation Store on August 21st, 2008. It was the first RNC to release digitally only, although it did get a physical version on March 12, 2010, which I bought in 2012 and used for this review. This physical version was only released in Europe, not even in North America, which I won't complain about, but it is strange, considering RNC is an American franchise. According to VG Charts, digital version sold 1.2 million units, whereas the physical version sold 500,000 copies, which totals to 1.7 million overall. This shorter RNC game is cheaper than the rest, so it wouldn't be surprising if it sold that well, but I'll take these statistics with a grain of salt, as VG Charts can be a bit all over the place with their estimations. I wish sales numbers for games were more reliable and readily available. Anyhow, the game was received fairly well with a Metascore of 76, but it is Insomniac's lowest score yet, which isn't surprising since this is just a bite-sized RNC. For the Tools of Destruction review, I recorded the game on PlayStation 5 through streaming the PS3 emulator, which was quite hazardous as it often lagged due to faulty network. And Quest for Booty doesn't even exist on the PS5, so I had to go back to recording on the PS3. The problem with that was that my HDMI splitter stopped working at some point, which is essential to allow my Elgato HD60 to record footage on a PS3. But luckily, the HDMI splitter worked again when I recorded Quest for Booty, so it went smoothly. The only other problem is that I don't have any DualShock 3 controllers in mint condition, and the main problem with my best one is that the L1 button is sticky, so it'll randomly zoom in at points, but hopefully there's not much of that in the footage I use for this review.
Once upon a time, there was a fearless young lungbags who gained fame and fortune by ridding the galaxy of Emperor Percival Tachyon and Captain Romulus Slag.
Ratchet and Talwyn are searching for Clank after he got kidnapped by the Sony, which puts them on a search for the notorious robot space pirate Captain Angstrom Darkwater, as he had ties to the Sony. They're discovered by Captain Slag's pirate crew, now basically led by Rusty Pete, who sends them to Hulufar Island, where they discover a way to contact the Sony using a telescope called the Obsidian Eye. However, they need a fulcrum star to activate it, so they go on a treasure hunt to find one.
Thanks, mate. And for the secret password.
Butterscotch, snickerdoodles.
As you can see, the premise of this game is really basic, and given that it's really short, not much happens beyond it. There are a few twists and turns, like Rusty Pete and Captain Slag betraying you, but it's pretty obvious that'll happen. What maybe isn't as obvious is that Slag fuses with Captain Angstrom Darkwater, becoming Slagwater, which makes for an amusing comedic duo that constantly bicker with each other despite sharing the same body. Rusty Pete and Slag are also a funny comedic duo, just like they were in Tools of Destruction, and I like that this game revolves around the space pirates, because they made up some of the best parts of Tools of Destruction. We find out new things about Rusty Pete and Captain Slag while they pretend to be buddies with Ratchet and Talwyn, like Rusty Pete being Jewish apparently, and I love the wholesome password Slag uses to grant passage.
I'm a little teapot, short and stout. Here is me handle, here is me spout.
Clank may be missing, but you often have a travel companion. Of course, they can't replace Clank, but it's still nice to not be completely alone. Even when you don't have a travel companion, there are others to interact with, or green glow-in-the-dark blobs called heliogrubs that I always try to carry with me for as long as I can. How can I resist these goofy goobers? Talwyn is the companion you'll be spending the most time with, and she's fine, but my favorite thing about her is how you can mess with her. One of my favorite aspects of this game is the amount of snarky dialogue options there are. When you get to Hulafar Island, you can tell the mayor there that you're a crotchetizer salesman, for example, which makes it so that others on the island refer to you as such. Talwyn has a particularly excellent escalation of this dialogue system. She gets trapped in the Morrow Caverns at some point and tells Ratchet to promise her that they'll leave together, to which you can make Ratchet answer that he can't make any promises, leaving her disappointed. You can leave the caverns without even freeing her, and she later shows up on Hulafar Island, annoyed, telling Ratchet that she knows how Clank must feel. Ouch! That whole arc is honestly one of my favorite things about this game. It's a lot better than Talwyn's actual arc, which is practically non-existent. In Tools of Destruction, it's established that Talwyn is looking for her missing father, Max Apogee, and this would have been very fitting to have as a focus in Quest for Booty considering Ratchet is looking for his missing pal, Clank. Alas, this game is far too short to prioritize any of that, displaying one of the length's biggest drawbacks. Had this game been full length, there might have been time to explore this plotline, which could have explained why Talwyn is absent from a crack in time, as she would be pursuing a clue to her father's whereabouts, while Ratchet continues his search for Clank without her. Ratchet's character doesn't get explored much either, which is a missed opportunity considering this is the first time he's been separated from Clank for a long period, with no guarantees of getting him back. I like how determined he is to save his best friend, and it can be fairly funny, but it would have been interesting to explore some inner conflict as he's forced to adventure without his best friend. He seems to hallucinate Clank being present at some point, which is a very fascinating scene, and I wish that had happened more often. Maybe Ratchet's desperation to get Clank back putting him into imagined conversations with him, perhaps apologizing for how Ratchet doubted Clank in Tools of Destruction. Instead, Ratchet's best moment in this game is him swearing, which is really good to be fair. The best moment of the game, at least back when I first played it, was the ending where Dr. Nefarious finally showed up. It was such a hype moment, the most iconic RNC villain returning after being stuck on an asteroid since 2004, promising a splendid villain for the next game. Overall, Quest for Booty's writing is decent. The comedy is quite funny, but the actual storytelling is nothing special. It might have been had the game been longer, allowing for more complexity, but as it stands, Quest for Booty's best piece of writing is its innuendo title. Quest for Booty definitely benefits from Tools of Destruction's gameplay, having the same buttery smooth movement and controls, which makes for a comfortable journey. Of course, the journey only taking about 3 hours to finish inherently limits the gameplay's potential, and while I'll give the game credit for being designed fairly well with this length in mind, it does also detract from its quality. 7 out of 15 weapons return from Tools of Destruction, about half of its arsenal, which is actually quite substantial, but the lineup is relatively lackluster. There's the Combustor, which works as the default pistol weapon, but it's pretty generic, and so is the Fusion Grenade, though I'll admit it's quite a handy bomb glove. The Shock Ravager is cool, but pretty useless in this game, and though I warmed up to the Tornado Launcher over the years, it's still a bit finicky to control. The Predator Launcher feels satisfying to use, but it's weaker than it ought to be, and the Nano Swarmers are a useful background weapon, but it levels up so slowly. It's nice that I only need to level up weapons twice, and I know this game isn't really designed for completionists, but I'm still annoyed by how repetitive it is to fully level up some of these weapons, especially since you can only use them against the same enemies once you've reached the final level. On that topic, it's actually possible to completely miss weapon upgrades scattered throughout levels, and there's no challenge mode to rectify this, which is so annoying if you have a completionist mindset. Sure, it doesn't take long to collect them all in a new save, but it's still annoying. Going back to the weapons lineup, the Alpha Disruptor is the last weapon you can get, or rather, an already fully leveled up Alpha Cannon. It might not be a rhino, but it is one of the best weapons from Tools of Destruction, so I'll gladly take it. This is actually the only weapon you can buy, and there's a pretty cool explanation for that. At the start of the game, you have all the other 6 weapons, which you lose in the Azorian Sea as you're shot out of a cannon to Hulafar Island, where you're forced to go wrench only. Then, you gradually get the other weapons back from people who find them at the beach. Rusty Pete, Barnabas Worley, and the Smuggler giving you 2 each. Then, the Smuggler sells the Alpha Cannon for 50,000 bolts, which you'll probably gain naturally by the final level. It's a neat structure. The weapons lineup isn't particularly good anyway, so I don't even mind that you're forced to go wrench only on Hulafar Island. In fact, it's beneficial, as it highlights the new Omni-Wrench Millennium 12's wonderful capabilities. This new wrench comes with a kinetic tether, allowing Ratchet to attach its head to objects, so that he can draw out bridges, lower springs, and move platforms. It's a bit rusty, but nonetheless a very neat addition that finally grants the wrench more attributes. It's a pretty big thing to introduce in such a small game, giving Quest for Booty a bit of an identity beyond its pirate gimmick. The new wrench is also able to carry and throw certain things, such as lava rocks, robotic pirate ghost skulls, and my favorite, Helio grubs. Just look at this little dude go. Given that Quest for Booty is such a small game, there aren't many levels, and they all take place on the same planet, called Murdergraw, which is a pretty cool concept that All For One would later capitalize on in a full game. Although there aren't many levels, they're designed pretty well, especially Hulafar Island and Darkwater Cove. I like how the former emphasizes exploration and platforming rather than combat, having to locate and climb towers in order to fix the island's power supply. The towers come with their own challenges and usually involve some use for the kinetic tether. There's even one that comes with a whole grind rail section, which is dope. It might actually be my favorite level in the game. Unfortunately, Hulafar Island also comes with my least favorite level in the game, where you need to defend it against the pirates. It's a slog of a combat encounter that highlights how boring the weapons lineup really is. The next level, Darkwater Cove, on the other hand, is another banger, where you need to convince the security system that you're Angstrom Darkwater himself. This involves a laughably easy combat section, but also playing a tune by platforming on pipes, mixing drinks to cryptic riddles, forming a shadow into the correct shape, and an actual combat section. The next half of the level is a really good underground section, which even comes with one of the mini-bosses from Tools of Destruction. Speaking of bosses, there's only one proper boss fight in this game, and that's Captain Angulus Slagwater. It's a really good boss battle that you fight in phases throughout a level. Quest for Booty's gameplay is pretty good, but it's also limited by the short runtime. I'll have to give it kudos for being designed well and introducing some big things in spite of that though.
Got another tune for you, lady. Stop me if you've heard it. The Sony world is yours to save. It's mine to plunder.
Presentation is probably the aspect that Quest for Booty excels at the most, because unlike writing and gameplay, the look and sound of the game doesn't get restricted by the short length, at least not as noticeably. Quest for Booty has the same look as Tools of Destruction, which isn't a bad thing, as that game looked great for its release year, and has aged pretty well. Of course, Ratchet's model looks quite rough now, but the game looks very nice otherwise. Other returning models look as good as they did in Tools of Destruction, and the new ones are also designed well, with a good display of creativity. This game is really good at building atmosphere, whether it be pleasant or haunting. Hulafar Island feels like a very welcoming place that's relaxing to spend time in, and the darker areas like Morrow Caverns and Darkwater Cove bring a sense of foreboding. Some of the most immersive moments are when you're forced to walk across narrow pathways while carrying a Helio grub in the dark, sometimes also hearing creatures shriek. It's spooky shit. The only artistic choice I'm not fond of is when the green filter comes on, as it can be overbearing and ugly to look at. Tools of Destruction had cinematic cutscenes that were directed quite well, and Quest for Booty continues this, though I have to point out that the cutscene with Nefarious looks underbaked. Like, what the hell is happening to his dome here? The other cutscenes are done pretty well, and I like how Insomniac snuck their own logo into one of them as a replacement for the moon. Quite the baller move. I love the storybook cutscenes that Rusty Pete narrates. Their art style makes them both silly and pirate-esque. This game also continues Tools of Destruction's dialogue scenes, and while they're still pretty bland looking, at least these don't just recycle animations this time.
What? Can't a pirate who's never told the truth in his life go blatantly out of his way to help the lumberjacks who killed his best friend and captain? Great! And I have just the pirate to help us. Ta-da! Ah!
The voice acting is really good as usual, and I like how much pirate speak there is.
A pinch of lover's greed, a dash of winter's sorrow. Top it off with golden sun, and bid thee fair good morrow.
The pirate themes were some of the best music to come out of Tools of Destruction, so it's nice that David Brachot got to embrace that theme in Quest for Booty soundtrack. Like the soundtrack for Tools of Destruction, it doesn't come close to David Brachot's early work in the PS2 days for me, but it's still really good. And I'm sad that this was the last time he'd composed for RNC. His absence has definitely been felt ever since. The presentation of Quest for Booty is really solid, with a few hiccups here and there.
Little did he know, the greatest challenge he would ever face lay just ahead. The end. Wanna hear it again?
Overall, I'm mixed on Quest for Booty. In terms of positives, the comedic writing is pretty funny. The gameplay is well designed with its short length in mind and carries over Tools of Destruction's amazing controls. The presentation is great, with pretty visuals and a well-composed soundtrack. As for negatives, the story has missed potential that could have made it far more compelling. The gameplay also has missed potential due to the short length. The soundtrack is really good, but I still much prefer David Brachot's early work. Quest for Booty is fairly good for what it is, but its short length unfortunately keeps it from being anywhere near as good as the previous Ratchet & Clank games. I'm therefore giving it the rating 7 out of 10. Not a bad score at all, a good one in fact, but considerably lower than the scores I gave to the previous RNC games, ranging from 8.5 to 9.5. I could see Quest for Booty deserving a similar rating had it realized its potential in a full-length entry, but as it stands, it's just good and nothing more. Maybe that's fine, and maybe that meant Insomniac could cook harder on a crack in time, which certainly paid off. I'll be covering that masterpiece in depth 2 months from now, so look forward to that. I'm Arcadon, and hopefully, you'll see me next time!